and welcome to this episode of Tripology. I'm Alan, and I'm here with the ever-pioneering Adam.
Well, you are ever so kind, mate. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Adam, if I may, I would like to ask you a series of questions followed by a declarative sentence.
Go on, I'm ready.
Why take things so serious? Why work a job you hate? Why listen to people telling you to do things you don't want to do? Life's too short for any of that foo-foo. Those questions and that sentence are not my words, no. They are the words of our guest on today's podcast. He's a traveller who makes videos on the internet. He's vastly approaching 1 million views on YouTube. You can find him at youtube.com/whereisdan. Our guest today on Tripology Podcast is the eponymous Dan.
Hello, guys. Thank you very much for having me. What an intro.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Dan,
lads.
it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Cheers. What part of England are you from?
I'm from Manchester.
Nice.
And I'm from Surrey, very close
Nice.
to Gatwick Airport. Lots of people know Gatwick.
I don't think I could pinpoint Surrey on a map, though.
You're also from the north of England, Dan, is
Leeds,
that correct?
yeah.
we
Manchester,
both-
right next door to us.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I left and went travelling, as did you.
Yeah. But I've ended up back in Leeds, unfortunately.
Okay, that's where I went to university. How are you finding Leeds at the moment?
It's all right. I'm just here earning money, but I'm excited to get back on my next trip in January.
Oh, you're thinking about coming to Canada?
I would love to, but I've never been there, but I would love to go. But I'm past that age of being able to get a visa.
Yes.
So-
Well, why don't we touch on that then? So, if you're comfortable sharing your age, because I think we
Yeah.
might be the same age.
33.
33.
Nice.
That's it. It's the first time I've announced my age on the podcast. We do know
Mhm.
that I'm considerably older than Alan is. That's something we've alluded to many times.
How old's Alan?
I,
Go on,
oh,
share
I
your
just,
age, lad.
I just turned 29.
Oh, nice. Approaching 30.
There
you
you
got
go.
a new passport to prove it.
Yep, just got the old new passport. Fans of Tripology will be excited to know the passport's here, it's arrived, and it's ready to go.
Did you get the extra large one?
Oh yeah, I got
gotta get it.
two passports stuck together.
Oh, you mean extra large in terms of the number of pages, not the size of the
Yeah, it's not a
Get like-
passport for people with bad eyes.
A4.
Yeah.
So, Dad, if we could just talk a little bit about what you're doing, why you're on the podcast, and sort of what you're up to now, that'd be amazing. Because I imagine it started some time ago, your love of travel.
Yeah, probably started when I was in high school, really. I've always been like adventurous. I was always mischievous, and I always liked going out and exploring and building things in the woods. Like I grew up before the internet, so I was always going outside and being adventurous. So when I left school, I just wanted to travel. And probably the biggest moment for me when I was younger that really inspired me to do it was when I was in Spain. I think I was about 22 years old. I was there by myself. I'd coincidentally met a bunch of Americans, and we spent the summer together, and we had a fantastic time. It was a great summer. And that was because I'd been there by myself, met them randomly, and that really spurred me to want to have more experiences like that in life.
That's amazing. Because I wonder what drew you to Spain initially. Because especially traveling on your own as well. I
Yeah,
was in
so-
my early 20s when I started going away on my own, and before then it's not that I didn't know it was possible. It just wasn't really on my radar.
Yeah, my from the age of like 5 to 13, we never went on a family holiday. And then when I turned 13, my parents bought a house in Spain in a little Spanish village. It wasn't like Torrevieja or Benidorm where all the English people go. It was just full of Spanish people. So that's why I learned Spanish. I'd always interact with them. Instead of like staying with the foreign kids by the pool, I'd go and chill with the locals. I'd go down to the beach and go on nights out with them. And that's how I learned Spanish. And that was another thing that I really like to interact with the local people and see their side of the country instead of just doing the touristy stuff. And that's kind of all these things in life has led me to do this style of traveling now, traveling by myself and doing local stuff from an early age.
I think that's really interesting. Like, there seems to be a running theme amongst people who end up traveling long term is that they kind of figure out quite early what style of travel makes them the happiest.
Yeah.
I feel like oftentimes the people who end up going home after 6 months do so because they don't really find that niche that they psychologically fit into.
Yeah. I think there's two types of travelers. There's people that rock up somewhere, they have zero plan of what they're going to do. They just wing everything, and each day they just take it as they come. And then there's people that have like a set, we're going to get this bus at this time, we're going to stay here, the next day we're going to do this tour, and then it's just scheduled the whole time. I could not think of anything worse. It's like you were saying, Adam, about my trip to Japan. I rocked up to Japan, I had 12 days there, I knew what day I kind of wanted to go somewhere, and apart from that, I had nothing planned, and it turned out to be one of the best trips of my life, being in Japan. Because I've been anticipating the trip for about 3 years. When I used to live in Korea, I couldn't get there because of COVID. So when I went back this time, I was set to go, and I was so happy. I loved Japan. Really, really enjoyed it.
I think what's quite funny about this, just correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in Japan for how long? About 12 days?
So, yeah.
Yeah. So when I was watching your video on Japan and you hitchhiked from, was it all the way from Osaka to Tokyo?
Yeah.
Yeah. So amazing video for any of our listeners who haven't seen it. Do watch it because it's an amazing watch. And I saw that recently, and I remember thinking throughout that video, I was experiencing a lot of jealousy actually, because I've wanted to travel around Japan, either hitchhiking or walking, which is something we share, for a long time. And I remember watching your video thinking, yeah, I mean, if I had a month in Japan, then maybe I would hitchhike some of it. And then at the end of the video, you mentioned that you were only there for 12 days. And then the last time I was in Japan, I was there for 17 days. So it's not like I didn't have the time to hitchhike. It was just me justifying why I chose to get the bullet trains, even though that did form a large part of my trip because I was interested in train travel in that way. It just goes to show that if you're very open to those sorts of experiences, time shouldn't be limiting in that sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I went with the intention of doing the hitchhike because I thought it would be the best way to meet people and also see as much of the country as possible. Unfortunately, when I did the Osaka to Tokyo, I did want to stop off at Mount Fuji, but it was overcast that day, so I didn't get to see it. But the guy that drove me past there was called Suzuki, and after I got out of his car, the guy that pulled up next to us was in a fancy Mercedes. And as I got out of the car, I was grabbing my stuff, and he was kind of looking at us and laughing. Actually, he was getting in his car, so I kind of stopped. It's like him getting in his car, and then he was looking, and then he realized what I was doing, so I turned around to him, through his window, and said, "Are you going to Tokyo?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Can you take me, please?" He said, "Sure, why not?" So I'd literally got out of his car, he opened the boot, put it in there, and then he drove me to his restaurant. He owned a string of restaurants, but one of them was his Chinese buffet restaurant. He said, "You can come, you can eat for free, and then after that, I'll drive you up to Tokyo." And he took me all the way. So I had no idea that it was possible. I just had this aim of, I'm going to do it I had actually 2.5 days. I left on Wednesday morning, and I wanted to be there by Friday afternoon to meet my friend Joe. And I just happened to do it in one day. So I had longer in time in Tokyo. But if I was to do it again, I'd have kept my sleeping bag and my tent, got dropped off at Mount Fuji, camped there for a night, and then continued the next day. Because hitchhiking in Japan was so easy. So easy. And I did some research before I left, and people said, "Oh, don't do it. The Japanese people are really shy. You're not going to get picked up." I watched other people's YouTube videos that had done it, like these old 240p videos, like really grainy.
Yeah.
And it had taken them ages to do it. So I just got really, really lucky. And it was amazing.
So
Absolutely
I want to talk
amazing.
about that idea of luck then, Dan. You've just said something like, I was really lucky. And I think that being lucky is an accusation often thrown out toward travelers. And obviously there is a certain amount of fortune that we all have to be able to do what we do. But I'm from a school of thought where openness often yields luck in a massive, massive way. And one thing that's striking about your videos is the sense of openness that you have when you interact with people. I think you're very, very good cultivating not only an approachable persona for yourself, but also encouraging others to be approachable. And there's a sort of reciprocal kindness that's a theme that runs throughout your videos. I think that is a genesis of a lot of this idea of luck. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I believe in karma. I think it's karma. If you're nice to people and you put good energy out in the world, it's going to be reciprocated at one point. It's like when I was in Nagasaki and I hitchhiked. I got picked up by Satoshi, who, when he picked me up, he said, "Do you have 15 minutes to help me do some boat maintenance on his little Google Translate?" And I was like, "What? You want me to
That's
help
a sentence
fix a
that
boat?"
could only have been written by Google Translate, isn't it?
Yeah. Can you help boat maintenance? So I was like, yeah, sure, mate. So he ended up taking me to his yacht. It's like really fancy 50-foot yacht. And no idea, it was massive. And that only happened because when he was younger, he said it was about 20 years ago, he was in America and he was in Harlem. He spoke zero English and people were just really helpful to him. Really helpful. And he said he went around America twice on the Amtrak's, the train, I think it's called.
Right, yeah.
And because he saw me hitchhiking, it reminded him of when he was in America and needed help. So he passed that generosity on to me 20 years later.
Yeah, paid it
going
forward.
back to like luck, it is luck, but also you have to put yourself out there to find yourself in these situations. If you just sat by a pool or doing a tour in a palace, you're not going to have that experience, are you?
Totally. Yeah. And someone else could have said no to that request he made and missed out on that experience and gone home none the wiser.
Is this something that's developed over the last 10 years, Dan? Because I know you've obviously traveled an enormous amount, but the genesis of your YouTube career, when was that and how did that coincide with your travel experiences?
So I've always traveled and I've always, from when I was younger, thought of having a YouTube channel. Even back in the day when I was playing Call of Duty, I was thinking of doing like spinning trick shots and stuff like that. But I never actually got around to doing it. And then when I first went to South Korea, I didn't really have a plan. I don't have a degree, so I couldn't become a teacher. I had the working holiday visa, but I didn't want to work. I just wanted to be in Korea.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll start a YouTube channel, making videos, and see how it goes. And after 2.5 years, it didn't really work out because I hadn't thought it through to like create an actual like model of like consistency and a theme from the get-go, like what people want to see. And when I left Korea, that hadn't worked out and I'd spent all my money. So I came back to England and I created this. Well, it was a little bit before that. It was towards the end of my trip in Korea. I thought I need to start a new channel, but from the very get-go, I should have a theme so people know what they're watching. Because on my other channel, it might be a food vlog, it might be drinking, it might be visa recommendations, lots of different things. It wasn't like one clear thing. But on the new channel, where it's done, it's just exploring. All it is going out and interacting and me pointing the camera face like forwards. So it's my point of view and the people that I'm around and the places I go and the cultures I see and like my experiences, instead of the camera pointing at me and I'm just like focused on me like, hey guys, I'm a blogger, I'm in a palace, whatever. It's more about the world around me that I experience. So I want to like inspire other people to go and see the local places, go to local markets, go chat to people, because everyone's the same and you can have an amazing time. People are really friendly. Don't read anything on the internet before you go anywhere. Just go and experience it for yourself. The last thing you should do is ask Google. Don't do that.
That's a great tip for the listeners. Yeah, just go and experience it. I think with the advent of documentarians like Patrick Moore and Louis Theroux, we are so often we become accustomed to seeing the camera facing inwards, and we as an audience experience things through the lens of that individual. So it's interesting to turn the camera around. Of course, that is the experience of traveling. You're constantly using an external facing lens when you're traveling. They're called your eyes. So it's good that you managed to capture that on film, you know?
Yeah. And then when it comes to the purpose of your content, I suppose you've touched on that just a minute ago, but you want other people to travel the way that you travel, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like the best way and it's what everybody should do, but
we are.
I just want people to kind of get out of their comfort zones a little bit. Like, do something a little bit different. And then, I think once you have the experience, then you'll... some of my best experiences in life have come from traveling and meeting people all around the world. And I guess that's the same for you guys. From traveling is where you get your best memories from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the reasons we're doing the podcast as well is kind of in the same vein. It's to try and break down barriers and allow people to hopefully realize that a life on the road is viable. And if you want to go and live in another country, as we have, or just go backpacking around South America, or even something I'd really like to speak to you about, Dan, is languages and the way that you've learned languages. Because it's incredible the fact that you can speak Korean to a very high level, right?
I wouldn't say very high. No.
Well, the Koreans would, judging by your videos.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say that, but anyone who goes now to youtube.com/whereisdan will hear that you do have a talent with linguistics and foreign languages. I think that it puts most of us to shame.
A lot of people always say, Dan, how do you study? How do you learn languages? How many languages do you speak? It's simple. You just have to study. There's study. That's it. I was very lucky, and this is probably, again, lucky. This is probably why I've gone on to learn a third language with being Korean. I learned Spanish because, like I say, I was going there every year for 13 years, and I was hanging around with the Spanish kids, and I had no idea what they were saying. So between summers, I'd go to the it's called Instituto Cervantes to learn Spanish, and I did that for about 3 years, like 10-week courses, and then gradually over time, because I was going there and speaking to people, my Spanish became really good. And then obviously the same thing happened in Korea. I ended up living there for 3 years. I was making videos, interacting with people, socializing with Koreans. My housemate Joe spoke fluent Korean. And so because I was immersed in the language, that's how I learned. And that's the same for anybody. If anybody wants to learn a language, you can. You just have to study and immerse yourself in it. There's no like secret recipe. How do you do? What do you do? What's the secret? There's no secret. Study and immerse yourself in it. That's it.
You've got a bit of a no shortcuts approach to life, haven't you? Don't use Google to find out stuff about a place before you go there, and don't try and learn a language without buckling down and studying it.
You got to be relentless with things. And that's probably why I'm lucky, because I don't just do something once. I'll do it multiple times until like I have a good outcome.
Right, that's an interesting thing as well. It's like you will eventually roll a 6 on the dice if you roll the dice enough times.
It's like with my first YouTube channel, I did that for 2.5 years. And it was a tough choice to say, I'm going to stop doing this, because that got up to about 5,000 subscribers. It was a tough choice to say, right, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to start again from scratch. I literally started again with 0. Some of my old subscribers came over, but now this channel, in the same time, has grown so much quicker. It's doing so much better. Like, I can see the community building up. Like, within the first 24 hours, the analytics are growing. It's just doing really well. So all the hard work from the past 3.5, 4 years is really showing off. So you're not going to get to learn a language you could in a year if you put in a lot of hard work, but to do anything, it takes a lot of time. A lot of time.
Yeah, tenacity, right? And you take what you learn with you as you go, right? That's one of the greatest things about travel, I think, is it might be the one activity, the one niche that you can operate within that allows you to use the entirety of your skill set that you've gone elsewhere, right? Like, I love music, but within the realm of music, I use my ability in music. But in travel, I can use language, I can write, I can talk to people, there's a huge wealth of things that I can turn my hand to within travel, and that's why it's so beautiful.
I think it also helps as well to be extroverted and be social, and I think that helps a lot. But also, even if you're introverted, if you go to a hostel, everybody's like-minded. Everybody's there to experience something new. Everybody's open for a conversation. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you're kind of on the edge of traveling, just turn up at a hostel. Go to a hostel and you will have the time of your life. The absolute time of your life.
Yeah, I've even met people who I think would consider themselves introverted, who have experienced prolonged bouts of extroversion whilst traveling because it's
Yeah.
made them that way. They've realized that life is so diverse and full of cool people that the introversion that I had back home maybe is less useful to me with regards to recharging my batteries here.
Yeah. I think people really grow when they go traveling. It's like the stereotypical thing of people say, "Oh, I found myself when I went traveling." But I think it's true. When people travel, they really do find themselves. They really come out of their shell and like find out who they are as a person, big time.
Yeah, I think we live, and I'm hoping that you'll echo this, given the sort of the focus of lots of your content and some of the things you say about the Monday to Friday 9 to 5, which is always the cliche, but we also use that as kind of a the example, the typical example, is that it's just really important that people break away from that. And when we're talking about finding ourselves, I guess some of that is realizing that we're not meant for the framework that we grow up in. And there are certain aspects of society that I wasn't able to view from a different angle. But then once you remove yourself from that environment, then you gain some perspective and you think, God, yeah, what are we all doing, guys?
My biggest life lesson, like learning experience, was leaving England when I was, I think, 26 to go to Vietnam. Well, I went to Korea first, then the Philippines, and then I ended up in Vietnam, and I ended up staying there for a year. And that year really changed me as a person and gave me kind of sense of direction of what I want to do. I don't want to work in an office. Was it before? No, was it? I can't remember if it was before or after that. I got home and I was in need of money, so I thought, right, I'll get a job. I'll get a good job. And I got hired as a business, some sales manager for a business startup company doing fitness. And on the second day, there was three of us. Person sat here, like the table I'm at now. So a girl there, guy there, and then the window behind me. And I was just staring at the screen. On the second day, I called up, so I quit. I don't want to do this. So I went back, gave them all the magazines, and then that was it. I was like, right, now what do I do? And yeah. My experience of working in 9 to 5 lasted about 2 days. Less than 2 days, and I quit.
I love what that represents as a story. I think that the hardest thing with regards to travel is that initial step, the booking of that first flight. We, of all, I imagine, met many people who talk about travel as if it's this calling that they feel so profoundly, but who, as of yet, have been unable to take that step to dismantle the inevitable things that need dismantling in their life and take that step to book a flight. And on that note, I would love it if you'd all join me for a brief meditation break. I don't know about you guys, but I feel ever so relaxed, positively effervescent with energy after that meditation break. We're here on Tripology Podcast with Where is Dan, a traveller who makes videos on the internet, and you can find him also at Where is Dan Graham on Instagram. You'll see all sorts of pictures and videos from his life on the road. Dan, I'm wondering if you have, like all travellers do, a particular story, a tale from the road that you wouldn't mind sharing with us. We are, after all, a travel community podcast, encouraging people to travel through the medium of those stories. What have you got to tell us?
I'll share a funny story with you. I don't think I've told this story on my channel before, but it was when I was living in Vietnam. When I arrived there, my friend Chris, who used to live opposite me, he was teaching, and I didn't have anywhere to stay, so we were sleeping in his bed head to toe for a month. And then I got friendly with his friends. We ended up going to a festival, and people from the festival, we moved into this really big building. There was 4 stories, an apartment on each one, and we all lived in this house. We had motorbikes on the bottom. It was a great way of living, like really cool in Ho Chi Minh City. And every Friday, me and one of my friends, Theo, we finished work at the same time. But on this Friday, he had like an extra class he was doing, so he finished 2 hours after me. And we used to mess each other like break time in class, right? Let's meet at this place at this time. So I'd finished earlier. I went home and I was drinking a thing called Nuc Mia, which is it's like a sugarcane juice. You go in the street, they put it through and they squeeze out the juice. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's a spectacle to watch, isn't it?
It's really, really good. and there was a local spirit shop. And every time I rocked up, I went on my motorbike. I didn't have to say anything. They just had the bottle of rum ready for me, gave it to me. I drove off. So I'd go home. I was drinking this Nukmia, and I had, at that time, I just started shaving my head with a blade.
Right.
And I had a big beard, and I had a tie-dye top on. And I was walking around drinking this Nukmia, and it was so delicious. I drank it all, got a little bit tipsy. Messaged Theo, mate, I'm heading towards Turtle Lake, which is in District 3. Really cool. If you ever go to Ho Chi Minh City, go to Turtle Lake.
Okay.
So I'm walking towards the lake. It's not a lake, it's like a big roundabout. So I'm walking towards the roundabout, and I see this building. You know me, I like to go to rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I look up, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to that rooftop. I walk in, and it looks like a hotel lobby with like people at the desk, and they had like waistcoats on, looked very fancy. So I went into the lift, and it goes up to the 16th floor. But to get to the 16th floor, you needed a key. And I could speak a tiny bit of Vietnamese. So I said to the guy, excuse me, can you help me, please? I want to go to the 16th floor. So he comes in, taps the card on. I'm there drinking my Nuk Mia. I'm like, cheers, lad, thank you. Go up to the top floor.
Did you say that in Vietnamese or in English?
Just in English. Oh, cheers, lad, thanks for that. Have a
Cheers.
nice day, yeah?
Yeah.
Went up to the top floor, the lift opens, and I come to this like really fancy communal area. You've got a big kitchen, there's sofas and like a balcony outside with plants. So I walk through this like big open plan kitchen to this balcony on the outside, and I'm like, I call Theo, making a video. Man, look, I'm on this rooftop. It's so cool. Look at this. And I'm drinking my Nuk Mia, laughing. And then I turn around, and there's a guy, a Vietnamese guy, really small Vietnamese guy with a chubby face. He's sticking his head through the patio doors like this. Excuse me, who are you? And then it dawned on me, I was like, shit, I'm in this guy's penthouse apartment.
Oh no!
The people downstairs, they must have thought I was like coming to teach in English or something.
Oh,
I don't know,
way.
because I said so confidently downstairs, oh yeah, I'm just going up to the 16th floor. They let me up to this guy's apartment. He closes the door, calls security, and they explained to him, I don't know what they said. And he says, right, excuse me, you have to leave. So he escorts me back through his penthouse apartment. Like, mate, you got a really nice place. He doesn't
You'd
understand what I'm saying.
infiltrated it. You'd
I've
infiltrated
this
the
guy's
apartment.
house, and he's calling up security, shouting in Vietnamese at them. I'm thinking, oh God, I'll leave now. Don't worry, lad, I'm leaving. And he let me out of a different lift. I went down the lift and then just walked out of there.
That's amazing. It was all very James Bond up until the point you whipped the camera out and called Theo, wasn't it?
I was like, yeah, lad, I'm on this rooftop drinking Nuk Mia, look at the views, lad, like this. And I turn around as a Vietnamese guy.
The noisiest end to an MI5 mission ever.
That's so funny.
amazing. That's so
Bit
good.
of bravado, bit of confidence, and you never know where you might end up.
So you speaking a bit of Vietnamese is pivotal to the story. That's how you sold your persona as an English teacher or whatever they assumed you were. Do you always like learn a bit of the language wherever you go then?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. The first thing I'll do is, like, if I'm in a taxi, I'll say to the taxi driver, how do I say this? So, like, at least thank you. I'll try my best. But Vietnamese, I could count to 10. I could order sandwiches and food and give directions, like on the back of a grab bike, you're racing through the city, you say, oh, go left, go right, like just like basic stuff. Not as good as my Korean, but... Is
the motivator for that, A, making your life easier, B, courtesy to the people, or C, as like you want to expand your knowledge and your skill set, or is it like opening doors, I imagine, in that sense?
Yeah, I just don't want to come across as a dumbass. I don't want to be in the country and be like, not be able to say anything to anybody. I want to have, I guess it's courtesy to be able to say to them in their language what I want. If I'm just shouting at them in English and they're not understanding me, I look like a dick. It's better to say something in their language.
I think it's like I shock myself at my inability, maybe slightly English unwillingness to kind of be vulnerable and learn a language, I suppose. It becomes so easy as a traveller to communicate in English and get good at using broken English to communicate things simply. I think that learning languages as you travel opens so many doors. It is the universal skeleton key to making friends and getting opportunities and trying different things. So I think we're big believers on this podcast, although I preach it more than I practice it, of trying to learn languages wherever you go.
Can you guys speak any other languages?
Adam's
I
a
can.
good linguist, yeah.
No,
Nice.
I speak French and a little bit of Spanish, Please don't
Nice.
test me on it. And
I can entiendo a lot of Spanish, but the speaking, the hablar ain't so great.
and a few words in Japanese as well. I don't know if you would second this, but when I went to Japan, I've been there a couple of times, and I've learned maybe 15 or 20 phrases. This is the first time I'm going to say this on the podcast, and I do apologise if it offends anyone listening. But some of the interactions that you have with Japanese people in, say, shops or hotels or whatever, they repeat those phrases so frequently that those interactions almost seem scripted. And it's an amazing part of the culture where, you know, you receive your food and you say the same thing, and then you finish the meal, you say the same thing. You go into a shop, you always greet the person the same way. You leave, you always say thank you the same way. And if you do get those 15 or 20 phrases down, even hearing things that the announcer would say in, say, a train station, you feel like you have a hold on what's going on some of the time. And I absolutely love that.
Is that repetition a function of them seeing you and trying to make things simpler for you to understand, or you think that's societal?
I think it's societal. I think you even hear lots of other people have those same interactions, and then, you know, you're almost listening in thinking, I just understood what they said. And you're a big old pat on the back.
Yeah, everyone's playing the exact same 10 chess moves over and over again in this conversation.
It is a bit
Dan,
like
what's
that.
your perspective on that?
They do that in Korea as well. It's like in Japan, they have the same words to greet you when you go into the corner store to say goodbye or to say hello. So yeah, I agree. Once you get those first, like, as you say, 15 phrases down, then from there, that's just like the first stepping stone. And that's the hardest part, is to do those first 15, because the pronunciation's difficult. You might not be able to read the symbols, but once you've like got that down, then you're off to a start. Just keep going. Every day, just learn a little bit. Like in my videos, if there's something I don't know, and there's a new word that I hear, later in the video or later in the day, I'll try and say it to them to remember what it is. Like I was just editing a video before this, and I was in Umpyeonggu, it's a district up here, and they only served food that was for multiple people. They didn't have like one meal, and she said this is an umshikjum, and I didn't know what that was. So, but later in the video, I used it, and I explained what it was. So, through speaking to people and already having like a little grasp on the language, when I hear something new, I can like put two and two together and figure out what it is. So I think, yeah, if you're going to learn a language, just the hardest thing is to get started.
Yeah,
do you know
some
what?
of the language that you are learning are like tonal in nature, right? So that's a hard thing to get your head around. Some people may not know listening to this, but there are certain languages, Vietnamese being one of them, where the intonation and the tone that you use when speaking certain words denotes different meanings of those words. So really a massive departure from English.
Yeah, Vietnamese is the craziest language I've heard. It's so difficult. All the words, when you look at them, it's just like 3 letters, but then they'll have like lots of accents everywhere. And like if it's like this, you got to pronounce it like that. If it's straight down or shaped like this, or there's a dot underneath. And
could you give an example of that for the listeners?
So the word com, C-O-M, was rice, but the word C-O-M, depending on the accents, could have different meanings, like 7 different meanings. It just depends on the accents on it. But I can't pronounce it because my Vietnamese was terrible. I'll count to 10 in Vietnamese for you.
Okay. Oh, go on.
Hai ba bom nam sao bai tam ching moi. I can still remember after all that time.
It
That's
convinced
brilliant.
me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as well, why people fall short before they've even started is that I have said this on the podcast before, but I do think it's true, is that when we're thinking about learning a language, we already think about absolute fluency and how far we are away from it. But if you just take your first step, if you do just try to learn how to count 1 to 10, or you just learn how to say hello, thank you, goodbye, then once you reach that level, you can then maybe try to achieve a conversational level. And I think that it's understandable why people wouldn't embark on learning a language, but as you say, the amount of doors that it opens up and the richer the experience. There was one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Dan. I watched a video last night when you were in Korea and you were speaking Spanish to a Korean lady. Yeah. And then there was a guy next to you who also speaks Spanish, but he was Korean.
Yeah.
And the exchange was so endearing. It was just such an amazing thing to watch the way it unfolded. What was your experience of that? Because I think, judging by your video, you were kind of taken by it as well.
Yeah, I was, yeah. because I don't think I really come across like a Korean person that speaks Spanish. Like there might obviously exist, but I haven't like had anybody come up to me and speak to me in Spanish. They always just assume English. So this lady just started speaking to me in Spanish. I was replying to her, and then we had a little conversation. But as I was leaving, the guy that was going in turned around because he heard her speaking Spanish and started speaking Spanish to me. I was like, what's going on here? And then we went on this whole conversation speaking in Spanish, but also Korean. And that was like muddled up in my head, trying to speak Spanish and also Korean and just like forgetting the words. So that was pretty difficult. But yeah, it was pretty cool to, and also like hear their stories of why they learned the language, where they've been in their lives. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's certainly the way that it can impact your life learning other languages. How do you feel like making YouTube videos has impacted your experience of travel?
When I had my first channel in Korea, it was really beneficial because it was a great way of meeting people. It was like-minded people that wanted to come to Korea, and most of my friendship group whilst I was there was people that had subscribed to my channel, and then they would come and meet up, we'd go for barbecue, and then we just became mates. So it's been, and then obviously with the new one, I'm creating a community, and I have constant offers of people saying, "Oh, Dan, come to my country. I'll put you up. Come to my city. I'll show you around." So I can see this like community building, and it's amazing. So maybe in the future, I'm going to do a series where I go to subscribers' hometowns and stuff, and they show me around. Like that's something I'm thinking of in the future. So YouTube has really helped me to kind of like make friends, I guess.
That's really
Really
cool.
good.
Yeah, we always talk about travel community. We talk about this podcast as its core aim being building a community of long-term travelers. It's interesting because travelers in general exist by definition in quite a nebulous community where people who have left our literal communities somewhat behind as we venture into the world and we become a community of travelers. So it's really cool to have other outlets where that community gets built. How do you find the experience of remembering to whip out a camera as you travel? Is it something that's become absolutely natural at this point? One of the things that I love about podcasting is that I can experience things without a camera and then kind of come back and journal them with Adam at a later date.
Yeah, I'll set my days of when I'm going to go out and film. But even when I'm not filming, I get up to the same stuff. Like when my mum came to see me whilst I was in Korea this time, 'cause she couldn't come whilst I was living there. And we went, whilst we were there for, I think she was there for 3 weeks. I didn't film anything. But there's multiple days where it would have been great videos. I went up in the cable car in Busan to the mountain. And when we came back down, there was loads of Koreans that were doing just like a midweek night class where they were doing traditional dancing and playing the music, and they invited us in there. And that would have been perfect for a video, but I just didn't film it. But when it comes to like choosing a video, I'll do a little bit of research of where I want to go, and like points of interest maybe, or like see how big the district is and how I'm going to get across it. Should I take my bike? Should I take the train? But yeah, it's kind of most of the time, it's just rock up and see what happens.
Do you feel like not recording that incident changes your feelings about it or your memory of it in any way versus if you had recorded it?
No. It was nice to like kind of just experience it for myself without the camera, because obviously when I've got the camera, I'm thinking about, right, when this finishes, I'm going to film like maybe just the trees in the forest as an intermission. And then the next shot might be us saying goodbye. So when I've got the camera, I am thinking about like the storyline of the video and how it's going to progress.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I don't have the camera, I don't have to do that. I'm just like, but yeah.
Absolutely. I find myself like on the trips that I've taken post Tripology launching, thinking very much with an editorial mindset of like, how is this story going to be podcasted? But it's nice that that happens later. I can sort of fundamentally change or adapt or think about how I feel about the story prior to it airing.
Yeah. I think that's why people enjoy watching my videos, because it's authentic. It's not there's nothing scripted. It's basically just me going out and seeing what I get up to and seeing the people I meet. And like I say, I try not to point the camera at myself. I'm more focused on my surroundings and the people I meet along the way. So I think that's what people are interested in. They want to see a video where it's not the typical doing something touristy where there's a million other people doing it. It's right, I'm going to rock up at this place. I'm going to go to Paris, for example. But instead of going anywhere near the Eiffel Tower, I'm going to go 5 blocks in the opposite direction and just go see what's going on over there. Because that's like what I genuinely do anyway, regardless of filming or not. That's how I've always traveled. I have zero interest in going and being guided around and saying, look at this, take a camera of that, let's do a selfie here. I don't care. I'd rather go to a local bar full of old people and just get drunk with them. That's what the locals are doing. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, I do think that you have a fantastic ability of capturing those moments, those interactions, because certainly for me, if I'm walking around a city and stuff, I've said on the podcast before again that, 20, 25 kilometers quite comfortably. And it's those interactions with the locals that we really live for. And your experience of traveling throughout the day and chatting to locals and maybe buying something in a shop that you've never heard of and all this kind of stuff is so very similar to the way I love to travel and the reason I love traveling, I think. So that's something that has it naturally taken that shape, or is it something you're also very conscious of?
I've just always been like that. When I do film, I am conscious that I think when I start the video, I should get an interaction with somebody, because that's what my channel's about, is like interaction with the local people. So if I don't want the video to start and then it's 3 minutes in that you see something else apart from me.
Yeah,
I want you to see someone else apart from me within the first 1 to 1.5 minutes, really. Don't want you to see my big bald face there talking to the camera for ages. That's too long. You need to see someone else and then move on.
That's reflective of real travel, though, isn't it? Like I always say,
yeah.
I can count on one hand the number of times in the decade that I actually felt like I was isolated or alone. I travel solo, but I'm always surrounded by people. It's nice that your videos reflect that.
I listened to one of the other podcasts as well before, and you were saying that you only travel with a backpack. And I'm the same. I only have a carry-on. It baffles me when I'm in the airport. I'm like, what have these people got in their suitcases? They're going away for 2 weeks, or they might be going... Only if you're going to move countries, that's necessary. But if you're going away for 2 weeks, what in the hell have you got in your suitcase?
Yeah, I mean, Adam moved countries, as did I when we went to Canada. We were still just carry on, because I honestly feel like everything you need in life can be fit into a carry-on backpack. And the
100%.
benefits of going all carry-on. Let's stress it again for the audience listening now. Maybe a lot of them are thinking about really going on a trip and fundamentally planning to stay out there for a long time. Even if it feels impossible to whittle down your possessions into a carry-on bag, really do try, because the benefits of doing that in the long term, the freedom that you obtain being able to jump on a motorcycle, taxi, in the back of a tuk-tuk, or just have your bag on your lap when you're on a bus without stressing about, oh God, it's under the bus, what's going to happen to it? The benefits of carry-on travel are so great, both for your convenience and I think for your mental health as well, just whittling down those possessions. What a great opportunity to do that.
And the best thing of all is when you arrive in the country, you don't have to fart ass about and wait for them to get it off the conveyor belt and then find that your luggage has gone missing. You just get off the plane and you go straight through. And
all those people who stand up on the plane ready to get off, they're desperate to get off their plane. I sit in my seat and then overtake them in the baggage reclaim section.
That's what I do. Whenever I arrive in a new country, I sprint past everybody. They think, who's this nutter running? I'm sprinting, lad. I run as fast as I can to immigration, so I'm at the front of the queue. I don't want to get there, and I'm sitting in the queue for an hour and a half. I sprint, get off the plane, and sprint like a nutter.
You can do that with a carry-on bag.
It's a lot easier. But then when I get off the plane, there's a coach there, and I've been running for nothing. When I get off the coach, then I'm running again. Full on sprinting.
Run onto a coach, run off of a coach. It's travel with Where is Dan?
I should film that next time.
Yeah.
Is that what the fans, what the subscribers have got forward? Is that what they've got to look forward to? What's next on the cards?
So I'm going to finish the Let's Go series. I think there's about 13 more episodes. But,
wow!
So that'll last me until November time, hopefully. But I want to break up the monotony of just being in Korea. So I'm going to try my best, if I have some free time, either at the end of this month or in September, to do a trip somewhere within Europe, or maybe something in England, something a little bit different.
Cool.
And upload like 2, maybe 3 videos in between that. And then hopefully that will all see me through until January. And then January, I'm going to go on a mad trip for 4 months. I'm just getting the hell out of here. Work my ass off for 6 months, and then I'm off. That's it. Don't know where I'm going, but I'm off.
Well,
He
you're always
doesn't
welcome
know
in Canada,
where
mate.
Hell yeah.
He doesn't know where he's going, but he's off. That is the philosophy of Where is Dan? We've talked about travel, YouTube, the generation of luck, infiltrating a Vietnamese penthouse in the process of living the trip behind the YouTube channel Where is Dan? You can follow him on youtube.com/Where is Dan or on Instagram at Where is Dan Graham. You can follow us at Tripology Podcast on Instagram and all social media. And you can send us an email. It's tripologypodcast@gmail.com with any travel stories and tips. I think that is about it for this week's episode of Tripology. But Dan, we do have a section after the podcast airs. It's called the Lost and Found section. It's exclusive for our Patreon subscribers, so we hope to see you around there. Adam, I don't know about you, but
Go on.
I'm feeling like deconstructing this reality and blasting off into a slightly turbulent but albeit bright tomorrow next week. Are you ready to go there with me right now?
Absolutely. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and we'll be keeping up to date with your goings on YouTube.
Cheers, lads. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye.
See you there. Bye.